Hello everyone, welcome to another What I Would Have Done Thursday, and today I'm going to be briefly discussing the film Howard the Duck. I will eventually try to see if I can find the other Titanic film, the animated one that was done fairly poorly as well, because there is a third one. But for now, I thought it would be good to kind of take a breather from that and talk about something else that is just as stupid and just as poorly thought out. So, without further ado, Howard the Duck was actually directed by George Lucas, surprisingly, and it is definitely considered one of his worsts. This is up there with, I would say, being as more being I would even say more disappointing than the prequels to Star Wars, because at least the prequels had some significance within the Star Wars universe as far as establishing a backstory with one of the main characters. But Howard the Duck is sort of this standalone that tries to basically follow the story or stories of a comic book that basically was about sort of what the film is about, which is a duck going from a parallel dimension coming to Earth. Yeah, so you can already see by the way in which it is set up that it is kind of goofy and out there. But I think the first biggest mistake that this film makes is choosing to stay in the live action format. Howard the Duck looks really goofy. I mean, when you look at it through a, I guess, puppet making standpoint, I mean, he looks really bizarre and definitely doesn't fit the mold of what you would expect as far as a duck within real life. I mean, Donald Duck looks way better. So obviously, I think had the format been changed to animation instead, it would have come off a lot stronger because you can do a lot more with animation, and having a duck within an animated universe makes a lot more sense than trying to recreate a duck with using using the form of live action. So I think that first, right out of the gate, establishing the sort of, I guess you could even argue, genre really of the film and having it being a cartoon really would have allowed a lot more of an exploration as to what the animators, and in particular the director and everybody else behind the film, could do with the film. And you can definitely see the limitations that they had as far as telling a story that follows a duck from a parallel dimension. So yeah, the cartoon world definitely would have suited this film a whole lot better. Now, what also really drags this film, and I mean, it's almost laughable just the direction that Lucas decided with this. He decided to make Howard the Duck have a love interest, and in this case, a human love interest. And that is just unbelievably bizarre. Like, that is just, why would you do that? That is just a, that just does not make any sense whatsoever. It's not like how the duck was cursed to be a duck. He is an actual duck from another dimension who talks and kind of walks like a human, but is still a freaking duck. And it is just way too bizarre, that whole relationship that they set up with him and his love interest. I believe her name is Beverly. So I would have completely scrapped that. Instead, I would have had it be a kid that he runs into that ends up being sort of the second main character, because it is established that the love interest within the film is actually really the second main character, because she's sort of, guiding him through this world that he enters, which is Earth. So basically, he goes from the parallel Duck universe to our universe. And what I think could have definitely been utilized here, as far as a plot is concerned, is have Howard the Duck, and all of this being in cartoon form, enter into our universe. The kid is completely confused, or runs into a kid. The kid is completely confused, but is sort of taken aback, but also intrigued by the fact that Howard the Duck is real. And you could even make a assumption too that maybe the kid thinks that Howard the Duck is from maybe a television show or something. Um, and the kid has a really hard time, I guess, really comprehending what's going on. But he sort of takes Howard the Duck in, thinking that he's some kind of uh, big shot TV duck, because the kid doesn't really know better, and sort of develops a relationship with Howard. But eventually, as time goes on, the kid sort of understands Howard's real identity, and what could have also occurred is have maybe some villains that are part of Howard's dimension come over into our world of Earth, and maybe they're after something that Howard has. I think in the comic books it's kind of established that he's sort of supposed to be kind of like a hero in a way. So maybe he's carrying something that they want, and maybe this thing has some potential power or use. Maybe not necessarily to like take over the world, but maybe do some damage within on Earth, or something of that nature too, where there's kind of a conflict emerging. I think having some villains wouldn't necessarily have been a bad thing, especially since cartoons primarily rely on villains. So had they had some sort of scenario kind of like that, I think it would have played off to the film's advantage a lot more. And basically, throughout the film, the kid initially doesn't know who Howard is and thinks he's somebody else. Then he discovers that he's really not somebody else. Once sort of the villains, I guess you could say, come into the picture, and then the kid and Howard sort of come together and try to stop the villains. And then ultimately Howard kind of returns home to his own dimension. I think that would have been a better setup as far as a film is concerned involving this kind of material. I mean, obviously, this isn't definitely something that is like, designed, I think, to be really high caliber. I mean, it's really not something that you could consider definitely classic work, or you could consider a classic, but I think had the film altered the things that I sort of listed off, I think it would have been a much better product for what it was, and just being kind of just this fun little goofy movie, instead of trying to make this somehow a live action bizarre and awkward and dark film. I mean, it really doesn't come off effectively at all. And again, had it made these adjustments, I think it would have been much better. Not necessarily saying it would be great by any stretch of the imagination, due to the fact that its subject matter isn't really as, the story doesn't grab you as much as some other stories I think would, but it would still at least provide some intelligence behind the material. But I think that's really all I can say about this particular film. I'd be more than happy to hear what anybody else has to say about it, if they and what exactly they would have done with this particular work. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about it without really giving or without really rambling on too much. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. I will be delaying Fridays and Saturdays video. I should be back on Sunday, hopefully. Uh, and all of those videos will be completed on Sunday. But until then, everybody, bye-bye.